welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast. And those are 6 thoughts about reading, writing, or sometimes about science fiction. So I've got my 6 things all ready, and I'm ready to get started. Well, before I begin on this list, I want to apologize because apparently last week, instead of saying 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, I stated that I was sharing 6 improbable thoughts about breakfast, which was not what I did. So I apologize for those false pretenses. And my brother emailed me. I didn't even notice when I was editing the podcast, and I was quite embarrassed about the mistake. But there you go. There's my apology for that. And hopefully this time I won't make any such mistakes. I'll do my best. So number 1 today, I did want to share again how writing is going on Firmament Humanoid. And it is really picking up again, which is so nice because I know for so long there I felt like I was just slogging through it. And now I feel like the plot is picking up, like we're really getting into the thick of it. I'm having more fun with it, which is just makes writing so much more enjoyable. Like for several days in a row there, I was dreading it every day, and it was just like pulling teeth trying to get the words out. And now it's still, has its struggles for sure, but it flows much more easily. I'm much more interested in this part. Like there's a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of interesting character moments. Like I'm just enjoying it more again, and I know I'll probably hit another slump, but it's always nice when you get to a place like this and I can just kind of rest in a sense. Like I can actually enjoy the process. So I'm grateful for that. And number 2, I think one thing that has made it so much more fun. So I reached a part in the book where I had to do some research, and it's interesting because sometimes certainly research is not always fun, but a lot of times, especially when it comes to science fiction, I will hit this groove where I'm kind of like researching something and like learning all of this, and one thing I learn leads to something else, and then that leads to something else, and then that leads to this whole new idea for the plot. Like it just snowballs, and so many like major plot points and twists that I've had, especially in the Firmament series, have come just from my research on different scientific aspects of the story. And I know I'm a huge nerd, but I just love it. Like so many times I'll be researching one thing, leads to something else, I learn something totally new, and it just like brings me all of these thoughts for like, oh yes, like instead of the plot being this, it's going to be that. Like it sparks major parts of the story. One example is in Firmament in His Image, the second book. I didn't really have, like I had them crash land on the planet, but I didn't really have any idea as to why. Like a lot of times early in the story, I'm just kind of like, blundering along, not sure why things are happening as much, and it comes together a little more later, which is where rewriting can really help pull it together better. But anyway, so I had them crash land on the planet, and then I was researching something else. I don't even remember how this came up, but I started learning about neutrinos, which if you don't know what neutrinos are, they're tiny, tiny microscopic particles, and they're so tiny that they pass through other matter all the time. Like there's millions and millions of them passing through Earth all the time. They pass through us, and they rarely interact with the other particles they pass through because they're so tiny. But when they do, like you can't even detect them. The only way we can detect them is that when they do interact with other particles, they will change them in certain ways. So I just became fascinated and was reading about neutrinos. And then I decided that would be a great way to explain a lot of the things that were happening. If on this planet, if their sun was emitting like unusually crazy high amounts of neutrinos, it might be affecting other things in ways that the crew is not used to. Like it kind of affected certain things in their reactor on their ship, and so I went back then too and not only explained all that, but I also explained how I even put in like little nerdy details, like it'll, I don't even remember what it is, but there's certain atmospheric gases that can be changed to other gases when they are combined with, or when they're hit by neutrinos. And so I just, kind of escalated. Like, I had the science exec say at one point, like, oh, there's an unusual amount of, I think it was argon in the atmosphere, and then later he realizes it should have been a sign of all these neutrinos. So anyway, and I was able to use that to explain a lot of things. So I've been doing some things like that in this book where and it's been all over the place, and I've honestly just been loving it all. Like, I've been studying everything from body decomposition to DNA to neuroplasticity, and all of it is sparking all of these ideas for the plot that is making it so interesting to me. And again, yes, I'm a huge nerd, but I'm just loving it. And I think getting excited about those elements, which is part of why I love writing science fiction, honestly, does help me get more immersed in the story. So that's been awesome. Number 3, I wanted to give another update on the Eleftheria cover. I actually just got another update from my cover artist last night, another mock-up of the character who's going to be on the cover. And so I think I mentioned last time he had sent me a sketch. He nailed a lot of the elements for sure, but I said I was going to have to think about whether there was any feedback I had for him on things that needed to be changed. And I did end up giving him a few things that I thought needed to be just tweaked a little bit. And so he sent me this other image last night, and this is how I feel like you can tell such a huge difference, because when I looked at this sketch, I didn't feel the need to like wait a few days and then get back with him. I was just like, oh yeah, that looks great. And so that was a huge tell to me. But yeah, I'm really excited, and I showed it to my husband, and he was like, oh yeah, it looks good. So I'm really excited about that, and that's really the main piece of the cover. Like, there's other things on it, but those things are not as particular as a character's face. And so I cannot wait to reveal that to everybody. Super excited for when that time comes. I'll probably just do like a small cover reveal. I don't have time to do any crazy marketing things anymore. But I am really, really happy to be making progress on this, and can't wait to share it with everybody. And then number 4, I don't remember if I mentioned this, I don't think so, but I actually did a couple of weeks ago go out and get a library card to a local library. And I did have a library card before, but it was for a library in the town where we used to live, and so it was kind of like we kept gradually moving farther and farther away from it, and so it was becoming, or it was like a 20-30 minute drive across town to get to the library, and that just was getting harder and harder to do, especially with kids and everything. So I finally just bit the bullet and went to our local library, which is like 5 minutes away, and got myself a library card for that one. And it has been so nice just to be able to pop right over there and grab a book that I have on hold or whatever. And the girls love going over there. They have all these puzzles, and usually the girls will sit and do some puzzles, and I'll read them a book, and it's been really fun. I'm really glad I finally did it, and don't know why I put it off so long, but I actually do know the reason, and it's just because I hate change. But this library is great, and there was no reason for me to be afraid of it. So I'm really glad for that, and looking forward to getting many, many more books there in the future. It's been so nice. And they also, because the library system here apparently is actually bigger, like they have 4 different library branches, and so I've already noticed like they have a lot more availability, and I've been able to get books much more easily from them without long wait times. Like, there was a book for our book club that I was trying to get at our last library, and I was like number 54 on the list. I still don't have it from them, and I put it on hold at this library and got it like within a week. So I think it's going to be really great. Number 5, so am I currently reading? It's a book I actually got from the library, and it is the second in the series I mentioned a while back. I had started reading the Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes series that started with The Beekeeper's Apprentice, and this second book is called Monstrous Regiment of Women, and I have read it before. I've read the first 3 books in the series before, but I've only read this one once, and it was a really long time ago. Like, I want to say it was like maybe 8-9 years ago. I don't know. It was a really long time ago. And I don't really remember it at all. I remember one of the most major things that happens in it, and I remember it was generally, which the title tells you this, but there was generally a lot to do with feminism, which is an interesting choice for a mystery book. But one thing I have noticed, so I don't agree with the feminism that is, portrayed and preached and whatever in this series. And in this book in particular, it's very strong. Like, she'll actually have quotes from church fathers and even from the Bible that I know she views as putting women down, but that are basically, patriarchal or complementarian in view. And it's things, clearly meant to disagree with these, the classical church understanding of the roles of women. So I don't agree with all of that. And yet I'm appreciating reading it. And again, I don't remember how it's resolved at all. So we'll see how I feel as I continue. But I appreciate how it's done because, again, I think I've said this before. I'm sure I have. If you have a accurate understanding of human nature and of how the world works, you're going to be able to portray it accurately, whether your worldview is correct or not, or at least somewhat accurately. So, for instance, the main character in these books, she is a feminist and declares herself to be so, and yet in this book, she comes upon this woman who's like this feminist preacher, and she like has these huge gatherings and almost like a cult following of women, and who she teaches, liberation to, and she does all these like good works, and very typical kind of like early, feminist type figure. And yet this main character, who you would think would be really caught up in all this because it's a lot of things that she believes, she is very skeptical, and she understands that this woman, regardless of what she's saying, probably has some underlying motive, or at least she's skeptical of this woman. She can tell that this woman and this feminist preacher is very good at, she's very charismatic, and she's very good at manipulating and controlling people, and that makes the main character rightfully suspicious. And she's not just buying into all of this because, it's a great feminist message. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that we can look at this, she and I, the character and I, in our different worldviews, can look together at this situation and say, it doesn't seem like something's right here, regardless of how we may feel about what this person is saying. And that rings true to me. That rings true that there are so many people for me that might be saying things that I agree with. And I know this has been proven true many times. There can be a preacher or some sort of figure in the church who has so many great things to say, has good theology, etc., and yet something is wrong, and later comes out maybe something was very wrong, scandals, or just different agendas or whatever. And so I've learned in my life to look at some of these figures with skepticism, and maybe too much sometimes, but it is very realistic. And to see someone else doing that, even from kind of the other side of the ideological aisle, rings true to me, whether I have the same worldview as her or not. And so I can appreciate reading it. Like, I don't feel, despite kind of some of the heavy-handedness, I don't feel like I'm preached at. Like, I feel like I'm just looking into the life of someone that has a different ideology from me. And I think that's done well. Again, I want to learn from that because I want to do that in a different way, but I want to make people be able to enjoy the story and relate with it, even if they may not agree with certain things that I'm trying to get across. So anyway, very interesting. Again, I don't remember how it wraps up, so whether her skepticism of this woman is well-founded or not, I don't know. I don't remember, but we'll just see. I'm going to finish the book and find out about it. And so number 6, one thing that's been interesting is, so I don't own a Kindle. I used to, but I sold it because I never used it. And I sometimes will read books on my phone, on the Kindle app, but very rarely. And I just am reminded again, so I hadn't honestly in a long time, and then there was some books I wanted to read, the Mysterious Benedict Society books, that I could easily get on the Kindle app. Like, I could get them right away. So I went ahead and did that. So the last book that I read was the second book in the Mysterious Benedict Society series, and I read that on my Kindle, or on the Kindle app. And then right now I'm reading this Monstrous Regiment of Women book, which is a real, whatever you want to call it, a real book, physical book, hard copy, which I got from the library. And it is just reminding me anew of why I don't read Kindle books, because there's such a major difference in my ability to focus on the story. And in this Mysterious Benedict Society book, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to focus on it. Like, it's an easy read, the characters are cute, the story is interesting. It's like there's nothing that should make it hard to focus on. You know, it's not a difficult read, it's not a boring read, like nothing. And yet I was having so much trouble like staying focused on it, reading for longer periods of time. And I would try to, like, I have this reading quota for the year, so I'd try to make a lot of progress, and I just couldn't focus beyond like a chapter or less. And at first I couldn't figure out why, and then I start reading this other book where I can actually turn the real pages and feel them in my hand, and I just like read through 4 chapters in one sitting, no problem. And thinking back, I was like, okay, it's because it was an ebook, and I just have more trouble focusing reading on a screen. And I'm not 100% sure why that is. I'm sure there's some scientific reasons behind it that I could research and find out. But I know that just for me, there's just certain things about holding the book in your hands. Like, it might be partly the fact that I'm a kinesthetic learner, and so actually having the book in my hands and physically turning the pages, I feel like kind of anchors me to the activity in a way that I can't ever really get while I'm just, flipping the pages on a screen, just, the words just sitting there. And I think something about seeing myself physically make progress in the book, where I can see like how many pages I have behind, how many pages I have ahead. I can flip ahead easily and see how much longer is left in this chapter real quick. Like, there's just certain physical realities to